What happens when you kill James Bond at the beginning of the movie? What do you do next?
For me, it was Tuesday.
Welcome to another episode of For Me, It Was Tuesday. I'm your host, GQ. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button.
It's a waste of good scotch.
Like the video, leave some comments on this video and the other ones that I've done. Check out culturejunkies.net. Also, check out our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. We're also on Twitch and Discord, so we are everywhere. So today we're going to be looking at the 2012 film. Well, the other film in 2012. James Bond's 007 Skyfall. Directed by Sam Mendes. Starring Daniel Craig, Dame Judi Dench, Javier Bardem, Naomi Harris, Berenice Marlowe, and Ralph Fiennes. Skyfall is actually probably it's definitely in my top 5 as far as Bond movies go. They did an amazing job with the story. It's very interesting to see how Daniel Craig's take on Bond essentially took him from before his 00 status to basically almost what feels like the end of his career, even though it's only been about a 4-movie span. He does, of course, have a 5th one coming up later this year. But when it comes to Skyfall, what I liked about it is you actually get Bond in a middle of a mission with Naomi Harris's character, who we only know as Eve at this point. And they go on a mission, they're chasing down a hired gun basically, and Bond actually fails. It seems like he dies. Eve takes a shot trying to hit the target that they were sent to go after, and shoots Bond by accident, and he falls off a train into a river, and we get into our opening sequence. And of course, first time ever, Bond has just failed a mission in the opening sequence of a Bond film. So there's a lot of interesting changes going on with this. This particular film being released in 2012 is the celebration of the 50th anniversary of the James Bond franchise, which of course started in 1962 with Dr. No. So after, of course, Bond seems to fail, it seems to essentially die. Of course, we know he doesn't die, but the world moves on. Bond is basically out of action for 3 months. He's hanging out on a beach, basically trying to cope with the decision that M made, because essentially M did authorize the shot to be taken, even though it wasn't a clean shot. So it's almost like M betrayed him, but at the same time, Bond is, I guess, cynical enough to know that he is a cog in the machine, and you know, he's one agent. I mean, and it's really, actually that point is really expressed early on when right at the beginning of the movie, Bond comes across one of his other fellow agents and is essentially going to take some time to, you know, apply some medical attention to him, and M says, no, leave him. The mission essentially is more important. So it paints M as a cold character, but at the same time, she's a realist when it comes to, they were trying to track down a list that would have given the assumed names and real names of agents that were in the field. Essentially very much like the first Mission Impossible film with Tom Cruise. But moving forward, beyond all of that, of course, I'm not going to go beat by beat for the entire movie. But some of the highlights, when Bond does, of course, get back in action, we see that he essentially lost a step. He's not as fast as he used to be. He's not as accurate as shot as he used to be. So it's really interesting to see Bond broken, basically. And he does eventually track down the person that he was trying to catch at the beginning of the film. And that fight sequence that they have in the basically a glass skyscraper, a glass room in a skyscraper, was amazing. I love the way it's shot. I love the way it's lit. I love the high kinetic energy of the fight. There's very few cuts in the fight. It's just tons of just really, really good camera work in that particular sequence. I mean, even right down to you're seeing basically silhouettes fighting until a couple of shots go off on the gun that they're basically fighting over. And that's the only light you get on their faces for like brief moments. So it's just really, really well done. So we move forward and we're introduced to Berenice Marlowe's character. Her name is Séverine. She's actually portrayed as a femme fatale when we first meet her, but you come to find out that that's actually not the case a little bit later on. But I do like how they portray her character. Very, you're not quite sure what's going on with her. Very, very attractive woman. But at the same time, you can see that there's more going on under the surface with what you than what you're being given. So that's actually really cool. I like how they did that. And I also like what they're doing with Ralph Fiennes' character. You're not quite sure if he's on M's side and MI6's side, or if he's a bureaucrat. And you get little hints and nods that it's like he's getting more understanding of why MI6 is important, why agents like Bond are important. And you come to find out later on in the film that he takes a very important position in MI6, following what is unfortunately the curtain call for Dame Judi Dench's run as M in this particular film. Spoiler alert for a 8-year-old movie. But the other thing that I did enjoy a lot in this film is, even though you go into Bond movies for the high action, the car chases, and all that other sort of good thing, there's a lot of really good character development in this film. When we're first introduced to Javier Bardem's character, Silva, you don't actually meet him until an hour and 10 minutes into the movie, and that's movie I believe is 2 hours and 13 minutes long, including credits. And you are introduced to the main villain more than halfway through the film, which is actually cool though. And I love the fact that his introduction is an unbroken, one-shot, 2-minute just shot. It's literally him coming out an elevator and walking towards James, basically telling him a story, more or less. And they hold the entire shot as he's walking forward, all the way up to the point where he is standing over Bond, who is seated at that moment. And it's just a really great piece of cinematography. So that's one of the major things that I loved about Skyfall, was just the way it was shot. And one of the other things that I noticed some people had made mention of with some of the other Bond reviews that I did, they said they were looking for the gadgets, and it wasn't quite Bond without all the gadgets. And I think what I enjoy about this particular film is they do reintroduce Q, who of course originally was played by Desmond Llewellyn, who had basically been in every Bond film up until he passed. They introduced Q as a new young kid, essentially, who's in charge of Q Branch, and he gives him a gun and a radio. Now granted, the gun is registered to his palm print, so only James can fire it. But it's like, we don't really, he even tells him, we don't go for the exploding pin thing anymore. And I think the interesting thing about that is, if you look at how Bond movies have evolved throughout time, James Bond's gadgets were always things that you couldn't get in real life. You couldn't, it would be really cool to have, again, all of the various vehicles that he's had, and the machine guns out of the headlights and all that other good stuff. But if you look at some of these smaller gadgets that he's had, Bond's kind of behind the times in a lot of sense with that, especially now, because you're looking at like little transmitters and things. It's like our cell phones do the majority of the stuff that Bond gadgets would have basically filled in for and do. So I like how they kind of partially address that in this film, but also at the same time, you still get to meet Q, and Q does have a part to play in this particular film. The only thing that I really wish, and again, it's no disrespect to the actor that they did cast, but when they go back to James's childhood residence, basically Skyfall, which is the home that he lived in, before his parents did pass away, they had the groundskeeper, who was a man named Mr. Kincaid. I wish, and I've said this even since I originally saw the movie back in 2012, I wish they would have just brought a boatload of money to Sean Connery's house and got him to play that particular character, that particular role. Because it would have been such an amazing thing to have Daniel Craig's James Bond meet up with the original, well, not the original, but the most iconic James Bond actor of all time, playing the groundskeeper, essentially, who does help him out in the third act of the film. I just wish they could have done that. That would have been something I would have loved to have seen. But all in all, Skyfall is a really, really well done film. The 4K transfer, of course, you see I'm working my way through the 4K collection of Daniel Craig's films. The 4K version of this film is outstanding. It looks amazing. The colors, the moments when it's almost all shadow, they look outstanding. This film is extremely well shot. As far as extras go, most of those are kept on the particular Blu-rays that come with that collection. You get about an hour of behind the scenes making of type featurettes. You get a few, you know, obviously the theatrical trailer and a couple of the other standard extras. The director's commentary is actually really very, very insightful, so I would definitely suggest checking that out. But I'm going to leave you guys with these final words. For many of you out there, when you knew that the 50th anniversary of James Bond was coming up, you might have been skeptical, worried. It's like, hey, Daniel Craig's Bond is a little bit too serious for my taste. No sense of humor, no gadgets. You know, he's just going out there running people down and killing them. And some of you might have been worried about it, you know, the 50th anniversary coming up. But for me, I was loving how Daniel Craig plays Bond. I love the ruthlessness. I love the fact that he has zero problem killing people that get in the way or people that are, you know, essentially, you know, basically need to be offed because they're probably going to do some bad things a little bit later on anyway. So some of you might have been uncomfortable with that, but for me,
It was Tuesday.
I'll see you guys next time. This is GQ. I want to give a special shout out to our Culture Junkies level patron, DeMarcus Smith. If you're enjoying our content, please consider going to our Patreon and becoming a supporter. There are different tiers to select from, and we thank you for your support.
Culture Junkies!